There's no doubt that we've all heard the term fast food, but have you heard of fast fashion? From the survey data that I gathered from my questionnaire, I found out that most of this class is actually unfamiliar with the concept of sustainable shopping and how fast fashion can affect the environment and the world around us. A few years ago, after getting a job and starting to make my own money, I started researching sustainable shopping and developed an actual interest in environmental studies. After learning how fast fashion affects the environment, I did my best to educate myself on how to shop sustainably and make more ethical clothing choices. Today, I'm going to discuss how fast fashion impacts the environment, what we can do to change our shopping habits, and how our actions can have a positive or a negative impact. I'll begin with how the environment is being negatively impacted by unsustainable shopping across the globe. Fast fashion, as defined by Audrey Stanton in an online article for The Good Trade, is a design, manufacturing, and marketing method focused on rapidly producing high volumes of clothing. Through observations of trends and generally very low-quality materials, this method of clothing production is a huge contribution to overconsumption and consequently harming the environment. Elizabeth Segrin, writer for the Fast Company, outlines how this overwhelming amount of apparel production is hurting the world around us. The inventory of clothing brands is made up of our Earth's raw materials and a staggering amount of actually unsafe human labor. Transporting these clothing items releases carbon emissions, and some bigger companies, like H&M for example, actually end up burning the excess amount of clothing that is overstocked in their inventory. According to Segrin, this burning of the inventory releases almost 3,000 pounds of carbon dioxide per hour, which is actually a lot worse than burning coal. Have you ever wondered why some brands like Shein or Forever 21 are so inexpensive? It's largely due to the fact that these companies produce so much inventory that they can't store all of it. To get rid of the clothing, these companies discount it in hopes of selling it more quickly. To get rid of the clothing, that means it's being discarded, and that contributes to over 21 billion pounds of landfill waste per year, and toxic clothing dye is responsible for 20% of water pollution around the world. Now that you understand why fast fashion is a problem, let's look at how we can avoid it. Through the survey data, I was happy to find out that the majority of the class actually prefers to shop in person. This is one of the easiest ways to avoid fast fashion. Though not all online companies are mass producing cheap clothing, ordering things from online actually does have some drawbacks. Most shipped items come with a lot of excess packaging, like styrofoam for example, which does not decompose and cannot be recycled. It can be easy, I understand, to do a lot of your shopping online, especially with the pandemic. Online shopping is what's convenient for most people. But if online shopping is the only option to you that's available, consider purchasing from smaller, privately owned businesses. Depop and Etsy are great websites to find items to support people who run their own shops outside of fast fashion corporations. Still, shopping in person is even better because it requires no excess packaging or transportation to get those items to you. Now more than ever, small local businesses are suffering. It's not surprising that the economy took a dive when the pandemic hit. Many local privately owned businesses lost the majority of their regular customers and the businesses and income that was coming from that, which led to a lot of unemployment and even bankruptcy in a lot of cases. These private business owners work hard every day to provide sustainable products for us, so it's important to give them the support they need to keep their businesses open. By doing research and choosing to support local businesses over fast fashion alternatives, you can live a lifestyle that's safer and healthier for the environment. Another really simple alternative to fast fashion is buying gently used clothing. I'm sure at one point or another you've all heard of thrifting. If not, thrifting is buying items or clothing from secondhand stores. J.J. Dolam, an article author on the site One Green Planet, notes that thrifting is a great way to keep items in circulation instead of letting them end up in a landfill. You can actually find a lot of clothes that are on trend and inexpensive, but without the harmful drawbacks of fast fashion. Actually, this whole outfit that I'm wearing today was purchased while thrifting, like most of the clothes that I own at this point. Everything is really good quality, and the items did cost less than $5 a piece. When I outgrow something or lose interest, I can always donate it, and then it can be reused again by someone else. Though it is also crucial to do your research on these thrift stores that you are buying from or donating to, because some secondhand stores like Goodwill, for example, do often face a surplus of inventory, like a lot of the fast fashion brands. And so then again, what they'll do is dispose of or incinerate that clothing, which kind of does the opposite of what we are trying to achieve. Now it's time to discuss consequences. Our actions, negative or positive, will have an impact on the environment at one time or another. Imagine what would happen if no one chose to shop sustainably. Fast fashion would become the most common option, which seems harmless until you look at the more extended environmental impacts. As I mentioned before, clothing does make up 21 billion pounds of landfill waste annually, and that's in a world where people do shop sustainably. Imagine what the environmental consequences might be if the number of sustainable shoppers dropped each year. Our oceans, which are already full of pollution, would be subject to even more harmful chemicals and toxic dye from these fast fashion corporations. This in turn would affect the fish population and other marine life, which goes on to affect the food supply of a lot of coastal villages and cities. Local stores would lose even more business, causing most of them to shut down completely, putting people out of jobs or possibly even homes, depending on how bad the losses were. Now imagine if sustainable shopping got more popular each year. With clothing being circulated and reused, that 21 billion pounds would decrease annually. Fast fashion companies would grow less desirable as people educated themselves on the negative impacts, and overstocking would then no longer be an issue. This, of course, would not change the damage that the environment has suffered in the past, but it would allow us to be proactive and start taking steps forward rather than backwards. Finally, before I close, I request that you use what you've heard today and take action. Though fast fashion brands like Shein, Amazon, and Fashion Nova are accessible and usually pretty affordable, I urge you to consider alternative, more sustainable options. Shopping locally or buying from secondhand stores are two easy ways you can shop without supporting large overstock corporations that only contribute toxic chemicals and pollution to the environment. Next time you're in the mood for online shopping, take a moment to consider where else you could purchase the item. Could it be bought from a local private business? Could it be thrifted? Small steps like this can amount to a big change if everyone does their part to work towards a more sustainable future. Today we've discussed the dangers of fast fashion, how we as consumers can help, and how our actions can have consequences. I hope you've learned something about fast fashion and how sustainable shopping can improve the quality of the environment. While fast fashion may seem convenient at first glance, it ultimately will cause more problems in the future. We only have one planet Earth. It's our job as caretakers to educate ourselves on environmental issues and take action in whatever ways we can, big or small.